McCarthy here from talkSPORT, and I'm delighted to announce today, it's a whole announcement now, but I'm being joined by the big man, Eddie Dennis, who is not so big in the Celtic chair.
Because, well, the Celtic chair does go bigger, it does go to your height, but then my knees won't fit underneath your table, so I'll go, this is my actual height.
God, I was before using.
There you go, but we're going to go to where we are comfortably.
The Arsenal chair has got me feeling nice and big, ready for your wrestling school in January, Eddie.
Oh, are you?
I told you on Twitter. I'm going to do it.
A lot of people tell me a lot of stuff on Twitter that don't happen to be true. To be honest, Alex.
Well,
I believe it when I see it.
Now it's here. I feel like I can be held accountable.
Yeah, there you go.
We have the evidence now. But,
for sure. Well, you're coming to Knuckle Ox in January?
I'm going to be there, man. I mean, I see that you posted something on Twitter the other day about the intake in the new year. And
yeah,
stuff.
that's right.
I was wondering if I can make it work with all the stuff we're doing around here and maybe get into the Rumble and that. But it is something I want to do because the weekend class actually works for me.
Oh, perfect. It's good to do one of those beginner intakes because everyone's in the same boat, right? So it's a little bit less unnerving.
Yeah,
you show up to a class and there's like 15 people who've been wrestling for years. It's a little bit... But yeah, with those beginner intakes, you're all in there.
That's what I mean. I'm thinking about that first flat back, mate. I'm thinking about it. It was all over here.
Go for it.
Well, while we're on
you're
that,
never too old.
Why don't you tell
people? I don't even know how old you are, Alex.
Yeah, I'm 31.
Oh, never too old.
I know.
But the spring chicken.
Around Batista time, I think they'd say. While we're on that, why don't we talk about that quickly? Because when I did put that out on Twitter that I wanted to do a bit of wrestling training, universally pretty much, the London-based one was indeed your school. Talk to us how that came about and how it's been going for you.
So it's not really my school. I just coach there.
Yes.
So the school used to be called the Projo. It's always been based in and around the sort of Brixton area, and then Daryl Allen took over from it and renamed it Knuckle Ox. He was sort of the head trainer even when it was the Projo. But I've been involved helping out with him for years and years and years and years. And when I initially went full time back in July of 2017, I picked up a lot more classes because it was just a good way to supplement wrestling.
Yeah, of course.
And if I wasn't in a ring on a show, then being in a ring at a training was a good way to be spending my time.
Yeah.
And I've just carried on running classes there. So yeah, it goes really well. They've got a number of different kinds of trainers. So you get like it's got a good reputation, I think, because you get a broad spectrum of what wrestling is. And for myself, it just makes sure that I selfishly make sure that I get into a ring at least once a week.
Yeah.
So I did most of my rehab there as I returned from my injury. Yeah, it's a great little facility. Highly recommended.
Well, let's get on to that injury as well. I believe it was your pectoral, right? Very similar to what happened to Triple H, I think.
Yeah, similar injury.
The one that's interesting about that, and obviously everyone was talking about, was that you got injured, but it wasn't on a WWE show. First of all, obviously it seems like WWE we're okay with it. Well, okay.
I'm still here.
Exactly. We're doing this right now. But when it first happened to you, you thinking, oh no, like how was it?
No, I mean I wasn't. I certainly wasn't thinking, oh no, what are the consequences of this injury going to be with regards to it happening on an independent show, because I've never been given that impression from anyone involved with the organisation. I think they're very understanding of what we do is, a physical endeavour, and there's risk entailed each and every time that we do it. It was an event which was approved by WWE. WWE knew that I was there, knew that it was going on. It was just an unfortunate incident. I was devastated because it happened the day before I was meant to fly out to Orlando to spend a week at the Performance Center before flying to New York for WrestleMania weekend and be involved in Access and the NXT UK tapings over Access. So I missed out on a lot of stuff which would have been pretty special opportunities, and it was not the nicest experience in the world having to unpack my bags because my suitcase was all packed in my house, so I had to unpack all of that, which was a little disheartening.
But even from a momentum perspective, because you just had I think only a month or so prior, you and Dave Mastiff was
that's right,
one. And I know that some people watching this might not be aware of your journey, even though it seems like Britt Baker, the dentist, and Eddie Dennis, the teacher, we've all heard the story. But for a lot of them that haven't, that's a real 10-year journey. And then to have WrestleMania weekend taken away from you.
Yeah, I mean, the year prior, I was injured during WrestleMania period as well. So even though I wasn't signed with the company when I got injured in when was it, January of 2018, that was the first factor, the right one. I was still sort of scheduled to fly out to WrestleMania weekend with Progress.
Right.
And there was sort of murmurs that some of us would have been involved in access matches that year as well. So I ended up missing out on. I did actually fly out for that one because Progress sort of flew me out, and I did some promos at the Progress shows anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd missed out on it the year prior, so everything had sort of. I just started to get that momentum. You know, I debuted for the NXT UK brand in, I think, the July of 18, and just started to get a bit of steam behind me. I'd done that program with Mastiff that had culminated at TakeOver. I'd done the program with Mark that had culminated at Wembley for Progress, and everything was looking pretty rosy. And then obviously the second injury occurred, so sort of mere moments before I was going to be able to exercise that demon of missing out on WrestleMania the year prior. But 2020, fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Where's the wood I can touch? Because we need it.
I mean, it to me, like you said, that luck is horrendous. But one thing that probably has changed from down the years is the time you've spent in the new UK Performance Centre, right? I've been there and trained with the British Strong Style boys, and Sean Hayes seems like a phenomenon at what he does, right?
Terrific.
I imagine from these lessons that you've had, these hard lessons that you've had to learn, are you training differently now? You know, and a lot of that would come down to someone like Sean Hayes.
Yeah, for sure. Sean has completely transformed the way that I train now. As wrestlers, we are guilty sometimes of constantly seeking size. I think that seems to be the desperate sort of like must be bigger, and it's completely born out of ourselves. It's not as if we've got sort of people in our ear telling us, oh, you know, if you were 20 pounds big, like that stuff just doesn't exist. It's just sort of in our own heads. But what Sean, the WWE sort of strength and conditioning coach, has really sort of stressed in us is to train to be better at professional wrestling, or safer at professional wrestling, as opposed to be training to be stronger in unilateral movements at a gym, which have little to no correlation to your strength or flexibility or durability in a professional wrestling ring. So he uses this, he often refers to the adjective of bulletproof, and that's sort of his goal, to make the talent as bulletproof as possible. What we're doing is really physical. What we're doing always carries risk, but where you can minimise those risks with the training that you do in the lead up to it, is obviously a good thing. And I've definitely, after this injury, really just recently, I've really, probably the last 4.5 months, I've really drilled in on that, followed Sean's protocol to a T, and I just feel, as opposed to feeling stronger necessarily, I just feel healthier. It doesn't hurt to get out of bed, and you know, I feel like mobile and flexible and comfortable and fit and healthy, and I think ultimately those things are probably what will decide whether you're still wrestling when you're 45 or whether you're wrapping things up in your late 30s, you know.
Well, let's just hope that it results in you actually wrestling at WrestleMania weekend. That would be nice.
That would be great.
Just dialing it back quickly to Blackpool 1, we're going to call it now. I guess they're calling it. I guess so, yeah. They're going that way. You know, I thought it was a great kind of showpiece for you and Dave. Obviously, you know, made him look like the beast as well that he was intended to be. What was it like? I mean, I was there, so I know what the atmosphere was like. But for you, and backstage after, particularly your match, but also the show, talk me through how that was, because it felt like, for people who didn't know, that was like a groundbreaking moment for NXT UK. Yeah,
it was. I mean, a lot of it's a bit of a blur. The tag sort of opened the show, and the crowd was good. We did some pre-takeover matches, you know, and the crowd seemed good for that. And as soon as the crowd knew that like the red light was on and we were live around the world, and that tag the inaugural NXT UK Tag Championship match came on, the crowd kicked it up a gear and it was wild. And on one token, when you start hearing those reactions and you can feel that backstage, everyone's buzzing, everyone wants to go out and perform in front of those people.
Of course, yeah.
But when you're one of the select few that are performing in front of those people, there's a part of like, oh man, I hope they're not quiet for mine, because they're loving this, right? They're going wild for this. And me and Dave was probably like the sleeper match of the card, you know, the match which people were talking about the least, maybe. So we went out.
You got the Finn surprise in between.
Yeah, right. So we went out there with a bit of a chip on our shoulder and a bit of a point to prove, I think. And what was nice is there's lots of different stuff that's sort of like artistically satisfying about professional wrestling. One of the things that's really artistically satisfying is if when you walk out and the crowd aren't wild, and by the end, if they're really kicking off, that's a really sort of like artistically stimulating thing to feel like you've accomplished. And I think we definitely hit that sort of, nailed that. I think at the beginning they were sort of tepid, kind of enjoying it, and then by the end we had them hooked, if you like. So yeah, I was really proud of it, really pleased with how it went. Obviously I came up on the losing end and certainly felt a Finley roll on the floor just on wood, and then when a guy Dave's size sort of sends you crashing through a table, you certainly you can certainly feel that one the day after. But we had some nice moments, and yeah, it's a bit surreal to go back to your hotel room and think, oh, I just performed on a live special.
It's on the network forever now.
Yeah, I kind of, as a child, I kind of only watched live specials because we didn't at home we didn't have Sky Sports, so my granddad had Sky Sports and he used to tape the big pay-per-views. So
exactly the same way for me.
There you go. So I started watching wrestling in like 91, 92. So he'd only tape SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania. From 93, started recording King of the Ring as well. So I sort of grew up going special to special, you know, or pay-per-view to pay-per-view back in those days. So to be on a live special was pretty incredible, and TakeOver's like a bit of a benchmark for wrestling right now, I think. So to be on TakeOver as well is, it was wicked.
I've said in many interviews to different people that I firmly believe that takeovers are, and this isn't the thing because we're doing a WWE interview, I think they're the best shows in the world collectively. You look at the takeover stateside and even the Cardiff one that we had, right?
Yeah, unbelievable.
I think the standard that is set is unbelievable, and I guess that must translate to the talent where it's coming up and you think, man, like you must be in that mindset now with you and Trent thinking, okay, we know what we need to do here.
Yeah, you've got it. You got to hit your. I mean, A game is an understatement when you're talking about takeover. I'd certainly agree that if you're talking about, I mean, there is a spectacle to something like WrestleMania, which is really hard to match. Sort of 70,000-80,000 people in a stadium, but I think when you're talking about pure in-ring action, bell to bell, it's really hard to argue with the takeover brand.
And I think
for
you're
the
right
consistency.
As well. Like the fans are kind of on fire for the takeovers as well. You said 70,000 again. I've done WrestleManias with the open stadium and stuff, but the thing with Blackpool and even takeovers in, I don't know, Brooklyn and things like that, the crowd are so hot for them, which obviously makes a difference too. Yeah,
of course. I mean, the professional wrestling is really nothing without a live audience. You know, they're absolutely integral to what we do. So when they're there and they're buzzing and they're excited, and you can tell by how quickly these takeovers sell out. You know, Blackpool, I think all the tickets were gone within the first day. They don't hang about. Those people aren't casual professional wrestling fans who are going to a show because it's in their town.
Yeah, exactly.
They are rabid professional wrestling fans that are travelling to that town to take part in the event, you know.
I mean, just quickly staying on takeovers, I've spoken to Triple H quite a lot about the NXT UK brand, and he seems to give loads of credit to Shawn Michaels. Right? He says he's one of the main people who, the week of shows and stuff, he's there in the performance center. Just talk to me a little bit about that in terms of what he does, and I guess how surreal it is that someone like Shawn Michaels is literally walking people through and helping the product, because I think in terms of the in-ring product, that reflects really well. And I don't think anyone can argue that NXT UK is one of the better brands in terms of what is being produced in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Shawn is essentially our Triple H, I suppose.
Yeah.
So a lot of people assume that NXT is Triple H's baby sort of thing, and that he sort of oversees that in a similar way to the way Vince oversees main roster. For us, on a day-to-day basis with regards to NXT UK, it feels more like Shawn Michaels' baby. You know, so what does that entail? I mean, it entails him sitting down and watching previous episodes with us and chatting us through things. And obviously, when you've got Shawn Michaels picking apart and critiquing what you're doing, I can't see how that can't make you better. And then on the days of the shows, obviously you've got Shawn there overseeing everything, brainstorming ideas and stuff. And he's just an extremely approachable yet extremely knowledgeable gentleman is ultimately the only way I could describe him, in a similar way to in my previous profession as a teacher. You would have teachers who you thought were fantastic teachers and you respected, but for whatever reason you just didn't find them particularly approachable. So they weren't necessarily someone who you'd ask for advice off or ask if you could go in and observe one of their lessons or whatever. And Shawn, I mean, it seems ridiculous to say that I respect Shawn as a performer.
That you need to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I clearly don't, right? He wrestled for an hour at WrestleMania 12 in the greatest professional wrestling match of all time against Bret Hart. So I think that that goes without saying. But what doesn't go without saying is quite how humble and approachable he is, and quite how, you know, if you've got, it's not just that he's happy to help you out. It's that you can just see in his eyes that he wants you to ask for his advice.
Yeah.
You know, he wants people to approach him and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about this." You know, because he just loves the business. Obviously, isn't involved in the business from a physical standpoint anymore. And I can only imagine. I've not spoken to him about it, but I can only imagine that this is a way for him to get that. You know, I spoke a minute ago about that, like, artistic satisfaction. I think for him there's got to be an artistic satisfaction in helping young guys and then watching them perform and thinking, I helped that be as good as it was.
I always find it mind-blowing that like the NXT thing in itself is obviously makes the world of sense that it's grown to what it has, and the initial idea, I guess.
Yeah.
But the way
in a short space of time too.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
But the way that Shawn and Triple H, I say Shawn like I know him, like me and Shawn, have attached themselves to the UK market blows my mind sometimes. You guys like yourself spent so long helping to build what we have here now, and especially the core group that we have in NXT UK.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that in itself as well? Like, you feel just to have them come in and respect what's been built over here so much. That's what I get from Triple H all the time.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we can take a lot of pride in that as performers because we've been sort of like laying this foundation for years and years and years and years.
Without really knowing that it could be something like this.
Of course, I don't think any of us could have predicted anything prior to the first tournament.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone could have predicted what was going to happen. After the first tournament, you can start theorizing as to what that's going to lead to. But, you know, and the first tournament went from being announced to happening in such a short space of time. You go 3 months probably before the first tournament, and no one would have predicted where we would be at when the first episode of NXT UK aired on the WWE network, you know. But it's a credit to us as performers, obviously, for the last decade of hard work that we've put in, so that, you know, we created a scene, for want of a better term, on these shows that was the envy of the wrestling world ultimately. So much so that the biggest professional wrestling organisation on planet Earth decided that they wanted to be a part of it. And it's a credit to the fans in this country as well, you know, because without earlier I said that professional wrestling is nothing without fans, and you know that's definitely real. So without that rabid cult-like following that we've kind of built up over the last 5 years in British wrestling, you know, companies like Progress going from the garage to the ballroom to Brixton to Wembley, you know, that is really those fans because ultimately it's that footage that a Triple H or something would have seen and thought,
convince them.
Oh man, these guys are really talented, and B, this audience is desperate for a platform for these guys to show just how good they are, you know.
Well, I spoke to Cody Rhodes on the phone the other day, and he said when he left WWE that he felt like the British Indies blew up before the American did.
Yeah, I think that I mean things go in waves, right? So the early 2000s, obviously, when WCW and ECW went out of business, that was probably the first boom of independent wrestling. With, as you say, you know, your Ring of Honors and your Jersey All Pros and stuff, and then I guess that it feels like it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago that this boom in the UK started. But if you look at, I often used to think, you look at the size of America, and you look at the high quality independent companies that you have in America, they're really dotted around an enormous landmass that the high quality American independent wrestlers are flying in and out of. In Britain, we have almost just as many seemingly high quality independent products, but in a space that's just so much tighter.
Well, we're not even as big as Texas.
No, exactly. So. The tightest concentration of talented wrestlers on planet Earth definitely exists in the United Kingdom, I think.
That's the line right there. Let's talk about TakeOver coming up then. Obviously, like you said yourself as we were coming up here today, missed a lot of ring time. But now you're back fully fit and at just the right time. And it feels like to me that
poetic.
Yes, isn't it? That Trent Simmons a wonderful kind of partner to have in that space. He's charismatic. The fans are invested in him. A perfect kind of opponent. How did it all come about? And I guess you must have been delighted to learn that you were going to get a place on the card, because obviously it's very competitive these days.
Yeah, extremely competitive to be a part of the card. I mean, I only got cleared to wrestle just the week before we started taping Hull TV.
Oh, really?
You know? So, in fact, the week leading up to Hull TVs ultimately was when I was cleared to perform. And to find out that, hey, we're going to use these Hull TVs and you're going to go towards a program working with Trent Simmons at TakeOver, you sort of go, wow, sort of like straight out of the training centre, trying to get ready straight into the fire, you know.
Which is very cool, because they always had a plan. Like they're waiting for you to get back.
Really cool. So as far as working with Trent, I never worked with him before, which is the first thing which I always kind of stress, just because I think it's mind-blowing that given the circles that we've both walked in for the last decade, to have never wrestled one another is just bizarre, especially as we're both sort of like in that heavyweight bracket, if you like, and there's a lot of junior heavyweights in the UK. So
I can't believe that wouldn't have happened in Progress or something.
Yeah, most of the heavyweights have rotated through one another twice at least, you know. It certainly wasn't the first time I wrestled Dave Mastiff when I wrestled TakeOver, you know, as an example. So yeah, we've never wrestled before. We've only done a few interactions in tag team matches and stuff. He's an extremely charismatic individual, almost to a fault. And he's certainly one of the founding fathers of this brand. And himself and Tyler and Pete take a lot of pride in the formation of this brand, and rightfully so, for all intents and purposes. But for me, TakeOver is really just showing that as much as Trent is a founding father, and as much as Trent is extremely popular with the audience, and as much as Trent is a really charismatic dude, I certainly belong in the ring with him, and I can certainly match him sort of every step of the way, and that's the goal. Trent has what I would refer to as BMT in spades, big match temperament, you know. So it's my job in January to prove that I've got just as much.
Yeah, and well, when you say prove, really, it's you know, it's not to any one person per se, except maybe yourself, because
everything in
the
pro
desire
yeah.
is for you because you've been out that long, right?
Everything in pro wrestling is to yourself. I think, you know, you take satisfaction from satisfying your employer, you take satisfaction from satisfying the audience, but ultimately you take satisfaction from, you know, making your mum proud or your girlfriend proud or whatever the case may be, but ultimately it's all about yourself.